Batch 81 follows the lives of seven men through the eyes of Sid Lucero as they go through an increasingly challenging hazing process. They aim to join Alpha Kappa Omega, otherwise known as AKO, an influential fraternity in their university. There's a recurring trend of violence in the film by both physical and psychological means as it unearths the abuse that hazings have put countless individuals through. While this hard truth about fraternities presents itself as the film's main focus, it also acts as an allegory of the era that this film succeeds. The microcosm of events in this film parallels the macrocosm of Philippine society under martial law. It heavily reflects upon the inner workings of fascism and what gave former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. the power and influence he had during his time in government. Through various levels of physical and psychological abuse, the hazing leaders hammered the fraternity's facade of a value system into the neophytes. The seven men are robbed of their humanity and dignity, effectively forced into putting blind faith into the fraternity and being made to follow orders without question. Although their hazing leaders preach of pursuing noble ideals, the irony kicks in when viewers realize how distorted those ideals have become and the brutal and forceful efforts to create a group of people who will faithfully conform to the frat mindset. At the end of the day, the batch will willingly put themselves through the abuse to become masters themselves at the cost of nearly anything.
Anong pangalan mo?
Ani, Arnulfo Enrique.
Bastos to ah. Hindi ka ba tinuruan ng Hermas mo?
Mula kayo, master ng tawag mo sa amin, ha? Ano?
Opo, Master.
O ano pangalan mo?
Arnulfo Enriquez, Master.
The AKO fraternity itself demonstrates how fascist regimes, particularly the Marcos regime in this case, establish themselves as entities of authority, and that is as it's shown throughout the film through violence and exploitation.
Martial law, nakabuti sa taong bayan. Tama o mali?
Pindutin mo!
In the same fashion that Marcos regime had the political catchphrase, sa ikuunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan. AKO had something to the effect of, the beginning and the end is a brotherhood. Through building a twisted sense of purpose on their catchphrases, each regime produces batches upon batches of people who will carry on a legacy of fascism, possibly worse than the last. In this film, Lucero, in his own batch, become masters themselves and continue the abuse done unto them.
Alpha Kappa Omega! Alpha Kappa Omega! Ang simula at wakas ay kapatiran! Ang simula at wakas ay kapatiran! Alpha Kappa Omega! Alpha Kappa Omega! Ang simula at wakas ay kapatiran! Ang simula at wakas ay kapatiran!
The majority of Batch 81 was filmed on campus. A group called a fraternity typically consists of college students, therefore, this is an ideal setting for the film. When capturing the best event, the camera or the frame is always at the center, focused on the face of the characters to completely show their emotions, most especially during the hazing period. One of the best shots is the cup scene where neophytes drink beer, then spit it out on the cup. This appears abominably realistic. Another is the fight scene where some of the shots are chaotic, but the props and design used appear realistic. Like when someone was stabbed and cut in the neck, blood was gushing from the body.
Hayop ka! Ah! Takina ka! Akin!
In terms of wardrobe, because the actors casted in the film were older than their roles, they were subjected to wear more fitted, casual clothing to highlight that they were only college students. Since Batch 81 was set in the 80s, their sense of style back then consisted of fitted polo shirts and flare jeans for the men, and loose polo shirts and long skirts for the women. There were also scenes where clothing, or lack thereof, was used to highlight the power dynamic between the Ako brothers and the Neophytes. The brothers from Ako wore hats with their fraternity logo on them to show their membership in the fraternity. With the hats, you could tell who were the members and who were the neophytes. There were also scenes where the neophytes were required to take their clothes off. This was a part of their humiliation process, and it was to show that they were lower subjects compared to their masters.
Quintos. Mainit pa?
Mainit po, Master.
Tama. Hubarin ng pantalon. Hubad! Huwag niyong pansinin yan sila, Grace. Trip lang talaga nila yan.
Tumingin ka lang, may sakitan lang yan eh.
Oh! Hubad!
Because Batch 81 gives an ominous impression throughout the revelation of the plot's conflict, a lot of the scenes made use of shots taken from a lower perspective, which gives the viewer the impression that the subject should be feared of or feel scared on behalf of. An example is the scene of Arnie's electrocution.
Sige, papakupin niyo rin. Ayoko. Biniwan niyo ako! Ba't ako pakupin yan? Hindi naman ako nagkwenta! Biniwan ako! Masakit yan! Biniwan niyo ako! Masakit yan! Ako na lang! Ayoko! Masakit ka na!
Majority of the scenes where the fraternity initiations took place were shot in dimly lit settings. This aided in giving the impression of a secretive situation where the faces or expressions made by the characters could barely be recognized, like the scene where they conducted the 5 versus 5 plan of revenge.
Gano'ng katagal? 10 seconds! 10 seconds!
The characters who were part of the fraternity batch were often captured as a whole group in a line formation or in a circle, which then emphasizes the essence of connection or brotherhood they have been so desperately trying to form, regardless of whether the scene involved brutality or not. There were few scenes in which the camera was pointing against direct light or against a light source, the windows, that evoked the feeling of being close to revelation, yet still imprisoned in the darkness, or basically that you are not free.
Batch 81 immediately brings the viewer along the beginning of Ako's recruitment process, as well as establishes the musical scoring consistent throughout the film.
Bilis-bilisan niyo!
Which is primarily composed of synth-heavy tracks evocative of its time, as the rise of synthesizers coincided with the early 80s. The film plays with upbeat and lighthearted electronic tracks to enhance action sequences from entertaining to blood-pumping, while in contrast, heavy, booming synths are used to introduce scenes with a sense of fear. These deeper synths come in or out of scenes with an ominous humming.
Anong pangalan mo?
Arnie. Arnulfo Enriquez.
Bastos to ah. Hindi ka ba tinuruan ng Hermas mo? Mula ngayon, Master na ang tawag mo sa amin, ha?
In the first 5 minutes of the film, the fraternity's pledge, as recited by the neophytes, play over a montage of hazing rituals, highlighting how these ideals were continuously ingrained into the neophytes through a series of abusive methods by the frat seniors.
Nang di matiis sa mabuting landas, katarungan, pang-aapi ay di maaaring hayan. Pang-aapi ay di maaaring hayan. Pantay-pantay lahat sa isang batas. Pantay-pantay lahat sa isang batas. Katarungan ang hangad hanggang sa wakas. Kaisahan, isang kalooban, isang katuwiran. Isang kalooban, isang katuwiran. Hindi dapat tularan ang naging.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very
by the Alpha Kappa Omega fraternity, please welcome the Cabaret.
During a couple moments where fistfighting takes place, the sound effects feel out of place, though expected given the state of Philippine cinema and its technology at the time. Following an increasingly intense build-up assisted by the indigenous sounds of the first act,
Étranger, stranger, glücklich zu sehen, just please enchanté. Happy to see you, bleibe reste stay. Willkommen, bienvenue.
the musical performance of the Ako and SOS Frats used songs reflective of their respective political ideologies assisted to them by the director, with Ako being associated with fascism, hence the cabaret song set in Nazi Germany, and SOS representing anarchist views, therefore playing a punk rock inspired show. These performances were both lip synced, with the audio tracks being imposed in post production. Instances of internal diegetic sound being utilized in the film is mainly attributed to the main character, Sid Lucero, whose inner monologue can be heard.
Normal na araw ito. Sa umaga, tuwing MWF, si Miss Kasusong gumigising sa akin. Walang choice. Lahat ng zoology majors tumadaan sa kanya. Pero malakas ako riyan kahit paano.
Most notable moments of Sid's inner dialogue is in the beginning, where he professes his admiration for the Ako, Frat, and his masters, and after the death of Arnie.
Kanya-kanyang trip lang. Ito naman ang trip ko. Ito na sigurong hinahanap-hanap ko. Sikat daw ang Alpha Kappa Omega. Pinakasikat na frat sa campus.
Where he attempts to place the blame for his death on Arnie's lack of commitment to the frat.
Puta, malas. Kakalabuan pa ata. Kasalanan din ni Arnie. Dapat tinigilan niya si Tina.
The last 5 surviving members of Batch 81 are being initiated into Ako. A large group of members welcome them as they sing in unison Ako's anthem. The song is resounding and haunting, as it celebrates the psychologically and physically abusive trials and the deaths of naive men that had to happen so the latest recruits may be called brothers. In reference to the introduction of the film, at the very end, the pledge is heard for the last time over footage of Sid in the future, now taking his place as a master and perpetuating this tragic cycle of Ako's predatory hazing process.